In the meantime, though, we have a lot to talk about tonight. We have some severe weather to talk about. We have some winter weather to talk about. Which one do we want to talk about first? Those in the stream. Which one?
All I know, I think me and Tony still have a discussion to do in DMs.
Well, so I'll go ahead and speak up. Let's do the winter weather, get that out of the way, and we'll dive into severe weather.
All right, we'll talk about the winter weather. I would first, since that's right now, since right now we're seeing some pretty interesting stuff going on. I'm gonna go ahead and pull up radar scope to kind of give you an idea as to what's been going on. Give me a second to pull that up. Okay, here's what we have. I have the Chicago radar pulled up just to give you guys a general idea of what we're looking at. Let me go ahead and do that real quickly, making sure that turns out. Okay, perfect. It's showing on OBS. All right, so here's the situation that we have right here. We have a winter storm developing right now. Currently, we're seeing some very heavy snow over parts of Milwaukee, Chicago, Kenosha, and the areas in between. If we go ahead and go to Lincoln right here, we're seeing more of a freezing rain, sleet mix over here. Same with St. Louis. This is a developing situation that we're going to have to pay attention to. And overall, what do you guys think so far of this winter weather and how it's been panning out?
Yeah, so I think really the most telling thing is I and Pat, you know me, I'm not somebody to necessarily critique the weather service,
Sure.
but at the same time, we both know that the weather service can get things wrong.
Okay.
I think the weather service in Chicago completely dropped the ball
Okay.
with the current event. There were not even winter weather advisories issued, especially for a burst of snow that at one point we saw nearly 2 inches an hour just in the last couple hours across the Chicago suburbs.
Oh, wow.
And why I have such kind of a big issue with that is because when we look at the weather service as a whole and what they're there to do, they're an operational entity. They are there to provide heads up
Yeah.
or guidance to folks, especially those who travel to work into Chicago about upcoming weather that could, that they should be aware of. And because there wasn't any advisories issued,
Mm-hmm.
we had a lot of people on the roads tonight.
Yeah.
There have already been several accidents across the suburbs tonight because when you have a lot more cars on the road and people aren't necessarily aware of what's set to happen or the severity of it, that can lead to people letting their guard down. And so
Slippery
I think
slide.
it's a
Yeah.
slippery slope, exactly.
Mhm.
So just from that point of view, I definitely think the event itself did overperform,
Okay.
especially with the snowfall rates. But I think a lot of this is going to taper off tonight. And then for folks across South Central Illinois, round two will likely be tomorrow throughout the afternoon. And there are winter weather advisories out by Lincoln for East Central Illinois. But that's my big thing, Pat. I just think K-Lot really dropped the ball in this one.
Oh yeah, and it's not. Yeah, Chicago is the only office I'm looking at based from what I'm looking at Weather Service. They didn't issue winter weather advisories for this. Every other office has as of right now. So that's going to be interesting. In fact, almost all of Michigan and Wisconsin are under winter weather advisories for the snow. Same with Iowa and much of Indiana, and even the Lincoln office in Illinois has issued stuff because of this overperformance. I really hope the Chicago people can get their stuff together for that. Oh, I forgot to turn my camera back on over here. But yeah, thanks for that, Brendan. Is there anything else you would like to highlight with what's going on as of currently, based on radar, based on satellite, what you're seeing?
Not at the moment. I mean, the other thing I'll also add that I think for my weather folks that are watching tonight that really are in tune to sort of the technical side, I think the one thing that was really interesting was you really saw saturation throughout the profile in real time on radar. And here's what I mean by that for folks that may not be following me.
All right.
When we talk about saturation, right, we're talking about not just at the surface, but aloft. And so for those that were watching the radar earlier on this afternoon, especially across Western Illinois, it looked like all of a sudden you went from no precipitation to it just appearing out of nowhere. And the reason for that is because the radar was picking up on saturation being observed throughout the column. And so because of that, then you saw precipitation show up because then it started to fall. So again, for those folks that were watching the radar earlier today and just we went from basically no precipitation to it showing up out of nowhere, it was because you're seeing saturation in the profile happening in real time. So really unique phenomenon. And Pat, I'm happy to post even some loops later on tonight that will show that. But a very wonderful demonstration of that taking place this afternoon. And then I'll also just say too, as far as the event itself, again, I think for Chicago and for points in Milwaukee, things should be improving tomorrow. But that second round that we talked about just moments ago, likely more so to impact East Central Illinois and into Indiana.
Yeah, I've been looking at it. This looks like the second wave, like the backside of this cyclone, is going to be where the bulk of the snow and where a lot of these areas are going to get hammered, especially in Chicago, especially in Northwest Indiana, especially in a lot of these areas. And we're also, I think, what's not really being taken into account just yet, or either it's kind of been overlooked because of what's going on right now, is the lake effect that's going to be going
Yeah,
after this
good
in Lake
point.
Michigan.
hmm
Yeah. We'll have to see how that pans out. Personally, from what I was thinking before this started blowing up, I was thinking maybe an inch or two in Chicago and some of these suburbs, and maybe some more in points north, especially like near Waukegan and going towards Wisconsin. You could see a couple more inches of snow, but this system is basically exceeding those expectations and blowing this out of the water as of right now. We'll have to see what happens with it, but by and large, like you said, Brendan, based on radar and based on satellite, this system absolutely does seem to be overperforming, and that makes me concerned for tomorrow and Sunday. And it makes me even more concerned for what's going to happen down the road in areas like Michigan, Ohio, New York, those areas as well that I don't think we've really even considered just yet. So, what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think it's a good point, and I'll say that yeah, even for myself, I think that's something that I even overlooked was the lake effect. And we got to remember, right? We've had a pretty interesting month of January, February, where our temperatures, we had a pretty good cold period in the middle of the month of January. And then as we got to the beginning of February, we did have that stretch of some above normal temperatures. So, when we talk about lake effect snow, and this isn't the case for all Great Lakes because it depends on the depth of the lake, but, if we're talking about, say, Lake Michigan and Superior, you know, typically when lake effect season snow ends is when that freezes over the lake.
Yeah.
And so we haven't really seen that completely happen because it just hasn't been consistently cold, at least up until now, right? So, yeah, but back to the system itself, Pat, with the orientation of those winds and the fetch component, yeah,
Yeah.
I certainly can expect, Waukegan, places like Kenosha could, certainly get some additional accumulation. And of course, those numbers will be higher, as you mentioned, because of the overperformance of this first wave. So yes, great bet, great call out on that. Something that I myself even overlooked. So glad you caught that.
Yeah. For sure. Thank you very much, Brendan. Tony, Daniel, do you have anything you'd like to add with this winter weather threat?
Tony, if you want to go first, I'll go second.
Yeah, maybe Tony, talk about the maybe the Northeast. Give us some perspective on that.
So basically, we're looking at up in Albany, New York area, you're looking at anywhere between 3 to 7 inches. Um, in and around PA, New Jersey area, New York, you're looking at approximately 1 to 3 inches of snow with some ice accumulations with some higher totals at an elevation of 1,200 feet or higher is where your heaviest snowfall is going to be. Other than that, it's going to be rain in South Jersey. Sorry.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm actually pulling up the Her Run right now just to show you that. It's going to start out as snow for a lot of these areas, but then, especially in parts of Pennsylvania, it'll transition to freezing rain and sleet and then over to rain eventually, and you won't really see any more snow if this happens at all until you get to the backside of the storm. So that's what I'm watching. Anything else?
So basically, the Catskills is also looking at a 7 inch snowfall total. With that's the high amounts with about less than an inch of ice on top of that. So the Catskills are going to be really a mess up there in around New York.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Daniel, what are your thoughts?
Um, Personally, I've been a little bit more out of the weather sphere for a while. These snowstorms are rocketing up the northeast, and we have another one that's going to be a weird mixing event. A lot of mixing up here in the northeast this year.
Yeah.
That we're definitely more below average than most years on the snowfall.
Sure.
I think we're down like 10 inches below the average.
Yeah, that's a bit of a problem. Oof. But yeah.
Yeah. And Pat, I'll even add to, and this may be kind of we're still on the topic of winter,
Yeah.
but I think the other storyline that is going to be interesting, especially as we look at the overperformance of some of these snow systems, is the polar plunge that will follow suit as we head into early next week. And that's going to be for a large swath, predominantly the central United States, but then also extending down to the Red River Valley. We're thinking Texas and Oklahoma. And so with this additional snowpack, you get colder air to move over that. And with the effects of albedo, Tony, don't laugh. With the effects of that, right, you then get that colder air to be enhanced. So why I'm bringing this up is because we've already been forecasting for the polar plunge, for wind chills to be possibly anywhere between -25 to -30 across the central U.S. as we head into the early next week portion. But what I'm trying to really get at here is that with a increased snowpack, with the overperformance of these systems, we're likely going to see colder temperatures than what the model's outputting. So
what makes you think about what makes you why do you think that other than why do you think that, like, what are some of the, I know there's going to be a high pressure system moving in pretty shortly, but you're mentioning that because of the snow cover it could be colder. Like, what's the thinking behind that? Is it like albedo or something like that?
Exactly. Yeah. So with albedo, right, you increase your snow depth. And for folks watching, I'll just kind of give you a debrief on albedo. Essentially, what we're saying is when during the day, when you have incoming solar radiation, you have all these different interactions with the surface, whether it be a blacktop or a sidewalk or grass, in this case, snow. And so when we talk about albedo, it's the idea that when you have incoming solar radiation, that surface that the incoming solar radiation is reacting with is going to absorb that, but then also reflect some of it back up.
All right.
And so because of snowfall, it tends to have, and I always get it sort of inverse, but it's really kind of a higher albedo, meaning that it's going to radiate more than it does absorb. And so because of that extra factor at the surface could enhance some of the colder temperatures by about a few degrees.
Yeah.
So if we're right now seeing, for example, the -25 wind chills across the Midwest forecasted for that Monday, Tuesday morning time frame, it could be even pushing closer to -30, right? Very close to that threshold. Either way, regardless of how much snowfall we had tonight or not, it's still going to be pretty darn cold across the central U.S. So that will be something to of course, watch as we head into next week.
Absolutely.